It was a stormy night when I started my shift as an Uber driver. The rain cascaded down endlessly, making the city streets slick and abandoned. Despite the weather, I knew there would be passengers seeking rides, eager to escape the inclement weather. My first customer request came in, and I navigated my way through the maze of puddles towards the pickup location. The address led me to a secluded house at the end of a dimly lit street. As I pulled up, the only light pouring out was from the porch, casting eerie shadows on the rain-soaked ground. A figure emerged and hurriedly climbed into the backseat. I recognized a young woman, her skin pale and trembling from the cold. She shuddered and gave me an address in a quiet part of town. Despite the odd atmosphere, I started the ride and dove into the desolate, rain-drenched streets. As we drove, the atmosphere inside the car grew increasingly tense. The woman repeatedly glanced at her phone, her hands trembling uncontrollably. I thought it best not to pry, assuming it must have been anxiety caused by the storm. But then, a disconcerting feeling washed over me. A glance in my rearview mirror revealed a shadowy figure skulking in the distance, just beyond the reach of the headlights. It seemed to follow us, quickening its pace whenever I accelerated. My mind raced, filled with thoughts of danger and uncertainty. I swallowed hard, my grip on the steering wheel tightening. The woman in the backseat noticed my unease and gasped, pointing at the figure in the distance. "He's following us," she whispered, her voice laced with terror. Instinctively, I hit the gas and raced through the empty streets, doing whatever it took to create distance between us and the lurking presence. The figure pursued us relentlessly, keeping its distance but never backing down. The woman grew increasingly panicked, her breaths fast and shallow. With every turn, every flickering streetlight, the figure seemed to gain ground. My heart raced alongside the engine, as fear clouded my judgment. As we approached the woman's destination, I took a risk and swerved onto a narrow, dark alley. Hoping to shake off our pursuer, my heart pounded as we ventured deeper into the unfamiliar darkness. The woman clung onto her seat, her trembling turning into outright shaking. But just when I thought we had escaped, a piercing scream pierced the air, sending shivers down my spine. Glancing into the rearview mirror, I caught the silhouette of the figure right behind us, arms outstretched as if reaching for something. Or someone. Adrenaline pushed me to my limits. I sped through the alley, desperately searching for an exit. In an act of desperation, I emerged onto a bustling main road, the figure disappearing into the night. Breathing heavily, I turned to the woman, who, despite her fright, carried an expression of profound relief. We finally arrived at her destination, and with trembling hands, she exited the car. She disappeared into the safety of her building, leaving me alone with the echoes of our horrifying encounter. As I drove off into the rain-soaked night, my thoughts filled with questions. Who was that shadowy figure? What was their intent? I knew one thing for certain. The ride I would never forget, a chilling reminder of the dark forces that can lurk just beyond our perception. One night, I ordered an Uber after a long day at work. The driver arrived promptly, but something about him seemed off. He had a sinister grin on his face and his eyes had an unsettling intensity. I brushed it off as my imagination running wild. As we drove, he started asking strange and personal questions, making me increasingly uncomfortable. I decided to put on my headphones and ignore him. But then, the GPS suddenly went haywire, leading us down a desolate and unfamiliar road. I asked him what was going on, and he just chuckled ominously. My heart raced as I realized we were in the middle of nowhere. I asked him to stop the car, but he kept driving, ignoring my pleas. Panic set in, and I knew I had to escape. I pretended to be sick and asked him to pull over. When he finally stopped, I opened the door and bolted out, running as fast as I could. I hid behind some bushes, watching as he got out of the car and searched for me. After what felt like an eternity, he gave up and drove away. I waited for a while before cautiously emerging from my hiding spot. I managed to find my way to a nearby gas station and called the police. They took my statement and launched an investigation, but the driver was never found. To this day, I can't shake off the feeling that he had sinister intentions and that I narrowly escaped a truly horrifying fate. I once had an eerie experience as an Uber driver. On a foggy night, I received a ride request to a secluded, dimly lit area. The passenger, a man dressed in old-fashioned clothing, got in and requested an unusual route. He remained silent throughout the ride, and I could feel his piercing gaze in the rearview mirror. When we reached the destination, an abandoned mansion, he disappeared without a word. As I sped away, my phone rang with a message from the passenger: "Thanks for the ride." I never went back to that area again. It was a stormy night, and I needed a ride home after a late work meeting. I opened the Uber app and quickly found a driver nearby. The driver's profile picture showed a friendly face, so I felt relieved. The car arrived, and I hopped in. As we started driving, I noticed something odd. The driver's gaze in the rearview mirror seemed intense, almost as if he was studying me. I brushed it off, thinking maybe he was just tired. But then, the GPS announced a wrong turn. I politely mentioned it, but he didn't respond, keeping his eyes on the road. Minutes turned into what felt like hours as we drove down dimly lit streets that seemed unfamiliar. My heart raced. I asked him to pull over and check the GPS, but he didn't acknowledge me. Panic set in, and I fumbled for my phone, ready to call for help. Suddenly, the car stopped in front of an abandoned building. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized something was terribly wrong. The driver turned around, revealing a sinister smile that sent shivers down my spine. He locked the doors and said, "You're not going anywhere." Tears welled up in my eyes as I desperately tried to unlock the door. Adrenaline surged through me, and I kicked at the window with all my might. The glass shattered, and I scrambled out of the car, not looking back until I reached safety. I reported the incident to the police, and they launched an investigation. It turned out that the driver had been using a fake profile and had a history of criminal activity. My heart still races when I think about that night, but I'm grateful that I trusted my instincts and managed to escape the clutches of a true nightmare.
If you enjoy listening to scary horror content just like this, then hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you are updated on when I post a new video.